You are listening to the Dominance Academy podcast, the premier enclave for those who seek mastery in the arts of traditional relationship dynamics and the arcane knowledge of unlocking true leadership. We will explore the influence of desire, the mysteries behind polarity, the darker pathways of intimacy. And now your host, Mr. Justin.
What's happening, people? Excuse me. Hope you're having a good evening. I am as well, obviously. It's always a good evening when you're a man. Really couldn't think of anything better. I listened to some of the shit that goes on in the lives of women, and I'm very fortunate to have been born as a man. So, if you're into that whole gratitude thing, like I am, have gratitude that you were born as a man. It's literally one of the most powerful things on this planet. So think about that. Sit with it. Understand you don't have to deal with, all that shit that's out there. These ladies are having to contend with. Guys yelling at them for being on OnlyFans. You're not in the kitchen like grandma. It's like, well, all right. I was actually on that line. I was watching this very incensing. Why is my cat always flipping out every single time I'm streaming? He's quiet all day, and then I start streaming, and he's meowing like crazy. Well, anyways, so I was on, I think, Instagram, and this person had shared a clip from TikTok. And it was this panel of like mostly women, and I think this one guy. And basically these women were trying to justify what it is to be a modern woman and just to be on your own and make money how you want, even if that includes sexuality. And they were saying that, it's fine to do it this way. And the guy, just kind of pipes up, he grabs the mic and he's like, listen, you're not getting the man that your grandfather was because you are not the woman that grandma was. Like Fridays and Saturday nights, grandma was at home. I mean, well, all nights, grandma was at home, taking care of her family, cooking, cleaning, baking, hanging out with the kids or whatever, just regular like home shit. And he was just listing, going on, like just bashing these women. Like he was throwing some haymakers. And I typically don't like those sort of things, like where it just shows like men and women pitting themselves against each other. It's unproductive in my view. But so they're going back and forth, and the woman's like, well, yeah, you better believe that, like, grandma was out on the streets too. And he's like, yeah, but she wasn't selling her ass for, a 1995 membership for more than her ass, like everything, all kinds of stuff. So, but yeah, it's just weird. You know what I mean? Like just all that shit that people are dealing with. And the thing is though, is that like, when you're living as a man, you're really only focused on your own shit. Like you don't really listen to any of the stuff that people are talking about. You don't get into the social media nonsense, and you don't get into bickering back and forth with women. You don't get into bickering back and forth with men, other males. It's really a simple existence. It's really a simple existence. What's up, King Solar Power? I see there in the chat. Thank you. Yeah, I'm still trying to, like, it's very close, my intro. I appreciate that. I think it's very, very close to what I want to do. Next I'm going to get like a nice overlay, design a nice overlay for this, kind of fitting the whole theme. But anyways, but yeah, you don't really deal with like a whole lot of shit. Like life is pretty stable. It's almost verging on boring. in the sense that if you didn't do anything, things would be boring. Like you have to create and build to entertain yourself, to keep yourself stimulated and excited about life and things like that. But typically, things are pretty smooth sailing when you're a man. I stole my son's Superman mug for Halloween. Or I'm sorry, not for Halloween, for the New York City Comic-Con. So I take my son to the Comic-Con in New York every year. And it was his idea that we dress up like cozy Christmas, like Sunday morning Superman and Batman. So he has this really ugly Superman sweater. He has this ugly Superman sweater. And it's like, but it's sort of like Christmassy. And I got him some Superman PJ pants and Superman slippers and this Superman mug. And then I did the same thing for Batman. Like I got this ugly knitted Batman sweater and Batman pajamas, but I kept the pajama pants. They're really comfortable. And some black slippers and the Batman mug. And we went to the Comic-Con like that. And he even did like a little S curl on his hair, and people were loving it. Like I thought like people wouldn't like that. Pretty much every booth we stopped by, people were like, "That's such a cool costume. Love that." So yeah, that was our cosplay. Relaxed Sunday morning Superman and Batman. But yeah, so for this evening's stream, the secret art of the playwright behind punishment. And this was inspired by an instruction that I gave to a client of mine. And he was talking about, we were talking about punishment. We were talking about scene creation, because, yeah, you can just play, like kind of just freestyle it in the bedroom, and that's totally fine. You can also have a created scene where you have an intention. There's a whole purpose for it. And in the academy, I have it all broken down about basically like a flow chart, where if you want to go here, then your only options are this, this, and this. And you can choose this one. And then your options are this, this, this. And it kind of like leads you through the format of, how you're going to create a scene based on what it is you're trying to do the scene for. Like, is it just for pleasure? Are you trying to have her learn something? Like, is it training? Is it discipline? Is it just for pain? Is there, what's the intention behind it? And then that, there's other choices along the way, and it kind of leads you to the basic structure of how the scene goes. And, and then you can dress it up however you want, like whatever sort of theatrics, if you're into that sort of thing. And, you get into costumes and characters and all that bullshit. And, it can be a lot of fun for people who like to get into a whole other mindset and pretend to be someone that you're not, a completely different person, but that's not necessary. You can still do scenes without assuming a different character. But, so we were talking about scene creation and things about punishment. And I told him that, you can combine these things. You can combine punishment and scene creation. And the thing is, though, is, they don't have to be linked, but you can link them. You absolutely can link them. And so I was explaining the whole process to him, and it was a little bit too generic for him. He's like, hey, you got an example. Get an example for me. So I explained to him, and I read to him my example, and it was my actually lived experience. And he thought that was really interesting that I had planned it out. So what had happened was, my woman, she had misbehaved in a certain way. This was a while back. I think what it was is that, I'm moderately strict. I'm moderately strict when it comes to using proper titles. So my girl doesn't use my name. She just calls me sir or daddy or my lord or Mr. J. That's about it. Those few. And she was forgetting. So there was a rule that whenever she's answering a question or posing a question, she has to use a title. So if I ask her, hey, did you eat breakfast today? She'll say, yes, daddy. right? Or if she has a question, she'll say, "Sir, may I ask you a question?" Or "Daddy, may I ask you a question?" Or "My lord, may I ask you a question?" Something along those lines. And she was like not completely misusing them, but she was just it was spotty, like she would use it sometimes and then not the other. And I couldn't tell if she was just being forgetful or if she was just purposely acting out in this way in order to get my attention and that sort of thing. But either way, it's still breaking the rule. And this isn't like a super hard, boundary type rule. It's not a red light kind of rule. This is, in the middle. Okay. It's a yellow. So I allow her to fudge that line, and it's not that big of a deal. You know what I mean? It's not, I don't feel disrespected because she forgot to say daddy when she asked me a question. It's not a big deal. But I do want to stress that if you do have any kind of rules, it's super, super important to be consistent about enforcing them. Okay, so if you make a rule and you're clear about it, then you need to always enforce that rule every single time. You should never, ever screw up and drop the ball when it comes to enforcing a rule. All right. Now, the only time that it shouldn't be like immediately corrected, but you can still address it, is that like if you're in a certain situation that doesn't allow you to address immediate correction right then and there, or an immediate punishment right then and there. So you're out in you're out around town, you're walking around, you're looking at shops or whatever, or you're at the grocery store, or you're out to lunch or something, and she breaks a rule that's out there in public. You're not going to just like stop what you're doing, bend her over some parked car and start spanking her. I think my girl would actually be okay with that, but I'm of the mind that the people in your environment didn't give you consent to, visually ingesting your BDSM lifestyle. Okay, so you have to take that into account. You have to take into account that other people are not saying, "Sure, I would love to see you, enact your kinky life." Right? Because they're not saying that. So I'm not into public displays unless it's in an environment that it's understood that there's going to be public displays. But anyways, so in that sense, where you're in an environment where you can't act quickly, you can't get right into it and start correcting, you address it immediately. Like make it known that that something was broken, okay, that a rule was fudged. And then at that point, you tell them what's going to happen. And say, okay, when we get back home, this is going to be taken care of. We're going to address this right away, right when we get home. And that's like the only instance. But in any other circumstance, you want to deal with it right away. So this sort of thing was like that. Like it was building up and building up because I wanted to see if there was a pattern. I was like, all right, so she like screwed up a little bit here and there. Is this a pattern, or just kind of forgot that one day or whatever? And it was definitely a pattern. And so I was like, okay, this needs to be corrected. And I told her, and this even goes against my own rules, where I think it was like a couple days later, just because my schedule, I couldn't see her right away or the very next day. So it was like a couple days later. And so I broke my own rule where I was like, okay, I've got to, correct this, but it was like 2 or 3 days later. And typically that's not what you want to do because the impact isn't right there. I don't mean the physical impact, but the psychological and the emotional impact of being corrected. It's not right then and there for you to address, and then, becoming that much more deep in their mind. Okay. And that's important. So, sorry, let me just put a little beat in here. So anyways, so I had wrote up the whole thing, and I was telling my client, I was like, listen, you can't you can just be enacting these things on the fly, but it's much better and much more strategic if you sit back and imagine the whole scenario, the whole punishment scene, okay, going down, okay, or discipline scene. So the disciplining scene going down, And then as you imagine it, get to writing. And you start writing out everything as though you are a playwright. Okay? And you start visualizing and then creating everything, including dialogue, just like in a play. Like if you're looking looking at a screenplay for a TV show or a movie, or even a stage performance, it'll stay like the scene, and then there'll be lines per person, and then there'll be things like describing what's happening, and then this person does that, and that person does this, and then this person says this, and that's how I break it down. So I was writing it in this way. So I sat back and I'm like, okay, I'm not just gonna, go up in there and start punishing her. I'm going to plan the entire thing out, including my dialogue as well as hers. Now, of course, am I going to predict what she's going to say? No, of course not. But I know her well enough that my written responses for her lines, so to speak, are close enough to what she actually presented in reality. Because I know her, and she didn't actually have a lot of lines anyways, but I just knew how she was going to react. I know her likes and dislikes, so I know how to make the discipline, and I know how she's going to react, and I know what I was going to say and typically what she was going to say. So that's what I had myself do. And that's what I was telling my clients, like, listen, it's really effective if you write all this stuff out, you plan it out. Okay. And this is how a lot of your stuff should be done in your relationship. If you've got a power dynamic, it's going to be to your benefit and hers by you planning things out, taking moments where you sit back and no matter what it is, you visualize and write these things out, and you create a plan. And sort of you create a screenplay basically of what's going to go down, whether she's coming over to have sex, or you're going to make her lunch, or you're going to go take a walk in the park. Like a lot of guys, they just kind of like they're like, yeah, man, I've got the access, I've got the woman with me, and she should like me because I'm the man, and I'm just all she needs. And it's like, yeah, that's totally fine and great, provided you've got a really good mouthpiece and a nice imagination. And a lot of guys don't. All right. So it's helpful to sort of plan out what you're going to do. So at the very least, you can still lead. You can lead and what's going to happen. Like you're already 10 steps ahead of what's going to happen because you've already run it through your head. You've written it out, and it almost as if it's already done. And now at this point, you're just going through the motions. And she perceives it. This is the cool part. She perceives it as, oh, this guy's like really, not impulsive. What's the word? Spontaneous. Like, oh, this guy's really spontaneous, and like he's got these things all like he just has this idea, and you can play it off as if it's spontaneity, or you can play it off as like, no, this is what I have planned. And then she's observing you as someone who's very organized, who is thinking ahead and is planning everything out. And this is really, really powerful shit when it comes to women. Like that I'm both parts, right? Being spontaneous as well as being very planned. And I know that makes guys like scratch their head and they're like, what the fuck? Like, can't women make up their mind? And it's like, you gotta understand, women love all of it. They love all of the variety of shit. Like even sunshine and rainbows, like that gets old. They need a little bit of drama. They need a little bit of spark. They need a little bit of, rainy clouds in their life. And maybe it's so that they could appreciate, maybe so it's they could appreciate the, the sunny days. That's what people say anyways. We only have evil so that we can recognize good, and darkness so that we can recognize light. But I could see that. But I do know, I don't know why they like it, but I do know that they like it. They like having all of that shit. They like having all of the things. And, if she's really into you, she's going to want to have it from you. She's going to want to consume all of your parts, all the things that come of you. She's going to want to consume these things. And, and that's where the feathering comes into play. We have to feather that blending of what she gets and what you give her. All right, so let's jump into this document here. I can pull up the whole thing. If you got any questions, about this, about scene creation, planning, setting up your environments, just put your questions in the chat. If you got a question about discipline, and what's really funny is that, just really quick on discipline, I'm doing a whole bunch of research into domestic discipline, and there's a lot of this going on. There's way more than people realize, like a domestic discipline relationship. There's a lot. And I'm noticing like newer channels are popping up, like newer IG pages, newer YouTube channels. I think what's happening is there's starting to be like a counter swing. Okay. So as society out there, you guys are talking about the cesspool of the dating market. There's this big swing out. Okay. Where it's like, it's a fucking sexual free-for-all for women. They can do whatever they want. They can't be told no. There's no accountability. And it's just this, it's like mayhem, right? There's no order. There's no class. It's just hedonism, okay? And so with that, there's going to be, because it's so far in one direction, there's going to be a growth, right? Just like, I guess, the polarity that I was talking about with the good and evil, night, day, rainy days and sunny days. The yin yang of this is that with all that hedonism, it's going to grow a really strong authoritarianism. And that's what I'm seeing more and more of. Like people coming up and just talking about being inside an authoritarian relationship, being inside a domestic discipline relationship, where the guy is in complete control. And often these are coming from very like religious, specifically Christian based relationships, and and the guy is in control of everything. And he his wife is there for his pleasure and to serve him, and in turn he cares for her well-being, and sometimes she's working. Sometimes she's a stay-at-home mom or a housewife, and that's what it is. But I am noticing that the equal opposite is also becoming stronger. I see it in the growth of my own business, and so I think there's going to be a greater and greater interest of people wanting to create the direct opposite, where they're like, you know what, I don't want all that chaos. And as a direct response from that chaos is going to be a really strong sense of order. And then maybe that'll go away and there might be some sort of thing that balances out in the middle. But anyways, so let's take a look at this punishment planning that I had. Okay. So as with always, when I go visit my woman or she visits me, there's hand washing, because there's we live in New York City, and the subway surfaces are nasty. So there's always hand washing, followed by the usual hug, and then the kissing of my right palm. Like that's our greeting ritual. Okay. And so here's the lines. All right. And I said, come with me. And I sit her on the couch and I bring her to straddle me. So I'm sitting on the couch and she's sitting on my lap facing me. Okay. And so I'm stroking her lips, her ass, and her back, teasing her nipples. Okay. And I talk to her about how tonight will be a bit of a refresher. It's going to be, so there's many layers that I have going on in this. So there was like a refresher of like mindset. There was an introduction of a new practice, which we'll get to. And then there's layers of punishment mixed with pleasure, which she doesn't get to complete, which is also a form of punishment. Okay. So then I explain it, because I think it's very important when you are administering a punishment or you're disciplining your woman, that you explain why she was doing it. All right. It doesn't make any sense if she's just kind of doing her thing and just grab her, bend her over a chair and just, spank her. And then she goes off. She's going to be like really confused. Okay. You have to give an explanation before and sometimes during and after. Okay. You don't have to during, but it's a powerful tool. Like if you're reciting certain things, you're having her recite certain things while the punishment is happening, while the spanking is happening or the caning or whatever it is you're doing. Okay. Because it's psychologically, it just starts carving these messages in the mind. Okay. All right. So she's sitting on me. I'm like messing with her, getting her aroused while also talking to her that this evening is going to serve as a reminder to us both to who and what we are. And that's because at that period in my life, there was just a lot going on and I was slipping in the amount that I was monitoring her. Okay. And so I was slipping. So this is a correction for me as well as a correction for her. Now, the difference is why she's getting a punishment out of it is because during that time, I was telling her what she's not allowed to be doing. I reminded her and she still continued to do it. So this is why there's now a punishment. She didn't stop when I told her. Okay. So I told her that it's a resetting my mind and her mind and getting into a reminder of the thinking and the behavior that we possess in our dynamic. In doing so, it helps reset yours. Part of this is spanking. I've mentioned earlier in the week that there will be regular spankings. Practically every single time I see you. This is something we both need for different reasons. It won't be light, but it won't be heavy enough to leave any kind of bruises either. It's called maintenance spanking. The other part is for your correction and mine, which I will explain later. Do you understand? Okay, and she said she understood. And I had to explain a little bit afterwards in the actual life when this was taking place. I had to explain to her a little bit more of like what maintenance spanking was and the purpose for it. Okay. And it wasn't every day. It would probably be like I told her it would probably be a couple times a week, and it's not something that's going to be every single day. So that would alleviate her, because she's like, I don't want to go to work like with a sore ass every single morning. Like that's going to be psychologically, it's going to create psychological stress. Right. And it's not going to be helpful to her behavior. So I tell her to get the small metal butt plug. And the metal ones are really cool because they're heavy. Okay. So when they're wearing them, like if they're standing, there's like a vertical, like pulling this way, or if they're on their knees and like their butts in the air, it like causes it to sink kind of deeper. Even though it won't, because it has the retainer, shape that's on the end there. But the weighted ones are really cool versus like the silicone ones, which barely weigh anything. So I tell her to get the metal butt plug, the purple vibrator, which, it's one of the ones that I know she really, really likes, and the ring gag, and lay them out on the table. Right. And the ring gag is like a ball gag, but instead of a ball, it's like a metal ring, and it holds the person's mouth open via the teeth. And it causes them to drool a lot, which, by the way, my woman does not like to do. She does not like to drool at all. She does not like making a mess. So, just it makes her feel unpretty. She doesn't feel sexy when she's drooling, despite me thinking it's sexy. It doesn't feel degrading or anything to her. She just doesn't feel that it looks beautiful and sexy. I get it, but whatever. You're going to fucking drool. So I asked her if she understood. She said yes. I told her to get the stuff. And then I told her, now get on the bed on all fours and make yourself in the position with your ass in the air and your face down with your head turned to the side. Okay, so her upper chest is on the bed. Her butt's way up in the air like so. And I proceed to spank in a ramping fashion. Okay, so it wasn't the type of punishment or the type of spanking discipline where it's fast and immediate and hard. Okay, this is for when I use that kind of spanking, like if there is a serious infraction that needs to be dealt with immediately, and there's no, I want to make sure that it's very serious and that there's no bullshit about it. Okay, where you just come in, it's immediate, There's a few whacks. They're very sharp, and there's not a whole lot of them. All right. And it's to get across a point. Okay. That's not what this was. I wanted to warm her up. Okay. Because, like I told you, part of this was a mixture of pleasure and pain, and also the pain of not getting full release from her pleasure. So ramping spanking is the best way to go about spanking, especially if you're going into it with more eroticism in mind. So if you're just, like, aside from what I'm talking about here, if you're just getting into spanking and you're playing around in the bedroom, you don't want to just start hitting. Okay, that's not the way it's done. You warm up, okay, and you start lighter. Okay, so like, let's say you start, like, out of 10, you start out at 3. Okay, and you do a few strokes, like, left, right, you do that like 6 times, okay, or 4 times, and then you increase the number. So it's just like weightlifting, okay? You can increase the reps or you can increase the weight, all right? So it's like you can keep it at 4, but then start increasing the intensity of that. So you start whacking a little bit harder, bring that 3 to a 4, and then the 4 to a 5, and then the 5 to a 6, okay? And then you plateau. You don't go higher than that, all right? But you still keep it at 4 strokes. So it goes left, right, pause. Left, right, pause. And then you get to a certain point and you pause a little bit longer, like maybe like 30 seconds, okay? And let the adrenaline wash over her, okay? And then you let her know we're going to start again. But now you're starting, you're not going to drop all the way back down to 3, okay? You stopped at like 6, but you're not going to jump right into 7. You're going to start at like 5 or 6 and then work your way up to another plateau. And then pause, okay? And in this way, what you're doing is you're slowly allowing the blood and the heat, because your skin will get really warm and our skin will get flushed, right? And if you do this correctly, the adrenaline starts coming through and surging through their body so much where you can adjust their pain tolerance, at least for that particular moment. It's not permanently like throughout the rest of their life, but in that moment you can adjust their pain tolerance quite a bit. Whereas, like, let's say their pain tolerance is like a 4, you can bring them up to like a 7 or an 8. All right. And that's not to be confused with the number of intensity with your spanking. I'm talking about their pain threshold. So this is how spanking, when I call it ramping fashion, okay? So this is what I'm doing. So she's on all 4s. I go through a ramping fashion spanking, and then I pause during that plateau period to insert the metal butt plug into her ass, okay? And then I resume the spanking and continually ramping and then plateau, ramping, plateau. So now she's super aroused. She's feeling some pain. There's a lot of, blood under her skin, in the sense that, like, her skin's getting very flushed, okay, and very warm. And she is now being brought psychologically into, like, deeper into her submissive mind, okay? All the while, I'm reminding her verbally why we're doing this. The whole names, misusage and things like that, okay? And plus, she just had been annoying during that week as well. So where was I? All right, so then I praised her for being a good girl. Like, she wasn't like squirming or, whining or trying to get away or anything like that. And I told her that her spanking is done for now. Okay, so now she gets that little sense of relief. All right. And then I tell her to remove the butt plug. I give her a sip of water and have her sit on the floor. Okay. And I put like cushion on the floor and for her to sit. So her back was against the bed, the back of her head was against the bed, and I bind her hands behind her back, and then I like squat down in front of her and start playing with her nipples, okay? In which, for her, she's got very, very sensitive nipples, and to the point where if I'm talking, it's hard for her to concentrate. So I'm telling her to, what's happening, and explaining to her where she's fucked up and how she's being annoying and what she's going to be expecting next, and all while I'm playing with her nipples, which is fucking with her head. So there's, like I said, there's layers of pressure that I'm applying to her, like physically, psychologically, erotically, okay? So I reminded her, I said, like I said, you've broken the rules for my name quite a bit lately, and you've also been very annoying, and this needs punishment. And I said, I'm not going to give you any dick, because dick is a what? And she said, well, because dick is a gift. And I said, that's right, kitten, and bad girls don't get gifts. And she nodded. But I know that your holes need attention to keep you happy and healthy, so you're going to get dildos and toys instead. Do you understand? And she nodded, but she said, yes, sir, I understand, but I don't like dildos. I like your dick better. And this is true. Like, she really, I mean, she likes like vibrators, but she does not like dildos, like just like the silicone, just like fake dicks. Like, she's just not into that. She's into just those weird shaped vibrators. Okay. And I understand that. Like, they look like dicks, but they're not close to them at all. Right. So I can understand, like, as a woman being kind of like off put by that sort of thing. It's a little bit of an uncanny valley going on there. So she said, yes, sir, I understand, but I don't like dildos. I like your dick better. And I said, well, it's dildos or nothing. All right. And then at this point, I told her to take off her underwear. I want you naked so I have full access and seeing how your body reacts. And we're going to start with your throat. I know you've never sucked on a dildo before, but I'll help you prepare. And I told her that I'm going to make her drool so that her mouth and her throat become very wet with saliva, and it's going to be easy to fuck, right? So I'm not super cruel. I'm going to help her out. And I told her to open her mouth and stick out her tongue. And then she also has a very sensitive tongue. So I start playing with her tongue and like pushing my fingers down her throat. She doesn't gag from this at all, by the way. And yes, some like saliva had been produced, but I was like, look, this is not enough. And I said, this isn't enough. And I told her that I thought she could do better on her own. So I kind of put in a little bit of verbal degradation, kind of pushing her down a little bit. And then so I got up, I walked over to the table, I got the ring gag, and I applied it to her face. And then I squat down next to her and continued playing with her nipples and, telling her to stick out her tongue and, fingers down the throat and all that stuff. And now she's really like starting to drool, right? And so I said, stay here. And I went over and I opened up this little black box and said, I got you 2 training dildos, a small one and a big one. And we'll start with the small one first. And then I proceed, like, while she was on the floor, so she's sitting on the floor with her back against the bed, her head against the bed. She's got the ring gag in her mouth. She's got all this drool going on. Her arms bound behind her back. And I've got this, small, like very soft. It's not like a hard, firm dildo. It's one of the very soft, squishy ones. And, I proceeded to like fuck her mouth with this. So I proceeded to fuck her throat with the small dildo. And then I moved on to the larger one. And then giving her praise all along about what a good job she was doing, how beautiful she is, and how proud I am of her. Because I knew that despite this being a punishment, okay, I knew that this was something that she hated, right? And so I didn't want to drive it deeper because, again, this was just a misuse of titles. Like, it's not that big of a deal. So I didn't want to, like, make her feel like shit on top of delivering a punishment that I know that she detested, which is like tasting vinyl or whatever, PVC or whatever the fuck, they're silicone dildos, right? I know she dislikes the taste and the feel. So I didn't want to like layer too much negativity on there. So she was experiencing the negative while it's giving the verbal positive. Okay. So just to explain that. And then I stopped after a bit to remove the gag. So I used the small one to kind of like prepare her throat and her taste buds and all that, and then I moved on to the slightly bigger one and used that. Okay, and at this point, even though I was giving her the praise, she was full of distress, eyes were watering, drool fucking everywhere, and I knew she hated that. So a lot of psychological stress, all right, a lot of pressure. And then I stop after a bit, I remove the gag and I untie her hands, I help her to her feet. And I said, listen, I need to take a shower, but I want to keep my eye on you. And I take, one of the cushions from the floor and I place it on the toilet in the bathroom. All right. And I proceed to shower, but with the curtain open. I said, now turn on, and I hand her the purple vibrator that I had mentioned before. I said, now turn on the purple vibrator and put it in your pussy and turn up the vibrations to high. And hold it inside you and play with your nipples while you watch me shower. And I want you to think about how much better it would have been to feel daddy's dick in your mouth than those plastic dildos or those rubber dildos. And I said, go on. I want to hear you say it. Right. So she repeated the part about her saying that, like, I would much rather have tasted your dick than tasted those dildos. Right. And all the while, so she's sitting there on the toilet. She's got a vibrator on her pussy. And it's the kind that's like it doesn't look like a dick. It's like the sort of like, in the video where I went through the toys, I showed one of it. It's like sort of pink or purple, and it has like a J shape to it. And the one part goes inside the woman, and the part that comes up here has a part that has like one of those little sucker doodads that like sucks on the clit. All right. And so that's the one that she had inside her. So it kind of can hold in a lot easier. So she was playing with that, while she was sitting there playing with her nipples and telling me how much she wished she was sucking on my dick instead of those dildos. Okay. So more torture, right? But now it's more of like longing, right? Or like remorse, regret, when you like, you get some type of food that you'd ordered and you wish that you had ordered something else, and you're like, fuck, and you like ate it anyways. You're like, man, this is terrible. I should have got that thing over there. So that sort of thing. And then I said, okay, darling, I'm clean and hungry. I will eat, and you'll entertain me by telling me more about your party last night and any other stories you might have, right? Because I like hearing about her stories and, her friends and, little hijinks she gets into and work stuff and whatever. And I said, but I almost forgot something. And so I lock her hands behind her back and open this other box that I got that has a vibrating butt plug. All right. And then I insert it in her ass. And I said, now sit and tell me about your friends. Tell me about the party. And this vibrating butt plug is the kind that has like the little fob, right? It's electric controlled. So, I can control it. All right. And I said, now sit. Tell me about your friends, tell me about your party. And she goes on and starts telling me these things, but of course she can't really talk very well because I'm like fucking with the vibrations. I'm turning up super high, like right when she's about to talk, and then nothing comes out. And I'm like, what? I can't hear you. Are you having a difficult time speaking? I can't understand. You're gonna have to try harder. And then I like turn it off, and then she like gets into talking. So I'm like fucking with her like back and forth with that. So I turn it up, turn it down, and telling her, I don't understand you little shit. You're going to have to try harder. There was a light face smack at that point. And then after I was done eating, I turned her chair and I stand up to face me. And I said, listen, I promised I wouldn't be fucking you. So you're going to get your milk in another way. Okay. She doesn't like calling cum. She calls it milk. And I said, and then so she was sitting in the chair, and I stayed standing but straddling her, and and then I wet my hands with her, like her pussy was obviously soaked at this point, I wet my hand with her pussy and told her to spit in my hand as well, and then I proceeded to jerk off in front of her, okay, while playing with her nipples. And so she's a mess. She's got like, she's feeling embarrassed. I'm jerking off in front of her right when she would have loved to have been sucking my dick before, but not being allowed to. She hasn't come. She's like just a mess, right? I'm playing with her nipples, and then I jerk off, come in my hand, and then tell her to open her mouth, and she's to eat the cum from my hand, to drink her milk this way. All right. And that was how the whole thing went. All right. And so what I was reading to you was this plan, right? This screenplay, basically. And if I were to go back into this, I could turn this into a short story and embellish it and turn it into something that's, a couple pages or something like that. It'd be a lot of fun to read. But the point is that it's taking the time. Like after there was a reason to do it, I sat back, imagined, and then I was able to envision what was going on, and then eventually type things up and make it happen. 1 second. Okay. Just my girl's being funny. But anyways, so that was an example of what had gone down. And you don't have to do this, all right? But I showed that example to illustrate how important and what a useful tool. It's not important, but it's a useful tool to plan, visualize, and write out how you're going to interact. This interaction happened to be some discipline, all right, and an introduction of spanking. So I was like, okay, this is now the first step into us having regular spanking sessions per week, all right. And so during that discipline session, there was, if you saw the layers, like there was verbal degradation, there was reminding of why we were doing these things. There was the introduction of spanking as a regular thing, like something that was going to occur weekly. Then what else? There was the pressure applied, like the emotional pressure applied from taking dildos, which she hates, specifically for the taste and the feel, mixed with verbal praise, mixed with psychological pressure, which is, the using the ring gag. Okay, so that's a physical pressure plus psychological pressure, because again, she doesn't like drooling. Makes her feel, I wouldn't say ugly, but she just doesn't feel pretty when she's drooling. So that has a psychological or emotional factor going on there. And so there's a lot going on. Now, you don't have to do it like that. You don't have to layer things as much as I did, but that's where I find enjoyment. Like, I find enjoyment in being creative in that way and expressing myself in that fashion. Hey, what's up, Uncle Guns? Good to see you, man. Salute to you. But yeah, so that's what we did. It was fun, but not fun, because, it's like discipline it's an interesting thing, right? It's bittersweet, because man, my watch is knocking on the table here. I do enjoy, because I am a bit of a sadist, I do enjoy delivering pain, whether it's psychological pain or physical pain. I mean, I'm not way out there, but I do have my fair share of enjoyment when it comes to that sort of thing. But it's a weird catch-22 when it comes to somebody that you give a shit about, all right? And so it's this weird balancing act between satisfying the wolf within, and also minding that other person. Because you put too much emphasis on satisfying the wolf, then you become, you see with like blinders on. Okay, you can't see. Just all you see is just what you want to do, and that's good in some instances, like business or fitness or whatever. But in DS practices, this can sometimes lead to injury. It can lead to a breach of trust. There's all kinds of shit that it could lead to that are not good. And I'm working with a client right now about, taming his inner wolf. Okay, because his is very strong. And the thing is, though, is that this is another bit of irony. When you suppress the wolf, it actually makes it more volatile. It makes it stronger when it does come out. When it does get to come out, it becomes really, really strong. Because, and you see this in certain aspects in society, like with certain crimes, you got these, these incels who go out and they like sexually violate women because they have this moment and they just let the wolf out and the beast takes over, because there's just years and years of suppression that when it finally gets to go, it's like bang, it just destroys, right? We don't want that. So in order to control that, you have to let off the pressure. You have to open that valve a little bit and let the steam out every so often, so it doesn't build up a back pressure of not being able to show itself. Okay. And another way of doing that is getting in touch with your wolf. Okay. Getting in touch with the wolf inside, and not shame it or judge it or think that it's evil or something along those lines, and truly learn to embrace it. Okay. Because once you do that, that's when you can trust yourself to kind of let it out a little bit at a time, and then it can learn that there's actually a fence, right? There's a fence that's guarded by strong principles and codes and rules that guide everyone, including him, you know. And that's how this works. That's how you're able to integrate these things. So it's important to be able to let this out. Now, understand that can be kind of difficult if you're, super single. Super. If you're not engaging with women, and that's one of the largest plights of the modern male, is that he has literally become a social cripple. Like, if you remove the phone from the modern male, he's broken. He cannot survive. He does not know what to do. In any sort of crisis, no matter what it is, the first thing they do is pull out their phone. They can't act, they can't think, they can't feel, they can't move without their device. And the only reason why I can see it is obviously because I didn't grow up with it. I didn't grow up with this in my life, and I saw it coming. I saw it develop. I was at the time when you saw somebody with a cell phone, you go, who the fuck do you think you are? Who the hell are you calling? Are you that important that you need a phone on you at all times? Right? Like, just wait till you get home, like everybody else. Like, I remember seeing those people and thinking this. But anyways, so now you've grown up with all this shit, and because of that, it has ruined guys. It has ruined the sociability of men, and they've become weak in this sense. Their social prowess has diminished, and it's super feeble, super feeble. And so this has to be broken. This has to be broken, and the only way to break it is to actually go out and talk to women. Because if you don't, sometimes, I don't know your personal psychology or anything like that, but if you don't, that pressure valve, that pressure valve for the wolf is going to explode. And it could be you, and maybe it won't be you. But this is good. I think this is going to happen more and more often. I think this is going to become a greater and greater recurring thing. There's a reason why, like, incels, like certain incels, are on an FBI watch list now. Like 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. Now they're actually as FBI watch lists for being part of, like, probably like a subcategorization of a terrorist. That's fucked up. All because of pussy. Well, not really, but for them, it's about pussy. Really, what's underneath, right? What's underneath that? What's really got them? It's a terrible, fucked up relationship with themselves. But for them, it's this relationship to vagina that's got them all fucked up. And because of that, now they're seen as like a subcategory of terrorist. And they're on watch by the FBI. This is no joke. You can look this shit up. So you have to, if you don't want to be that, you have to be out. You have to communicate with women. You have to integrate them into your life, okay? In one way or another. You have to integrate them, be it online and use dating apps. Like, don't use fucking Instagram to try to pick up women. Don't do that. It's weird, all right? If you go on a dating app, then it's understood that everyone there is for dating, right? Instagram is a wider base. People use it for all sorts of stuff. And dating is probably lower. Excuse me. So it's not like primarily used in that way. A lot of business and marketing. So it's like halfway part of dating because people use their Instagram as like a form of marketing for dating. But anyways, go on the dating apps. Talk to a shit ton of women. Like, it's not that hard, get a photographer to take a few shots of you, take a few selfies, have a little bit of approachable sort of imagery. Don't make it look too professional, right? Because if it's too professional looking, then you look like you're untouchable, like you're a model in a magazine, and you don't want to be that detached from people. You want to seem accessible, but up. Okay. And, like the top shelf at the grocery store. You kind of get on your tippy toes to reach it, but you got it. So yeah, that's kind of like what you want to do, and like set up your dating apps that way. I don't fuck with Tinder because it's just, I don't like waiting. I think that's just bullshit. I like to have apps where I can interact. So I like Hinge, I like Bumble. I think Coffee Meets Bagels like that. Plenty of Fish has turned into a weird fucking cesspool because it's sort of like social media plus dating, where they've kind of combined TikTok, so there's like lives and shit, and it's very weird. Plenty of Fish is very weird at this point. A lot of trashy women on there. But anyways, so I don't use that. There's Hinge, Bumble, and Facebook dating. And all of these allow you to interact with a woman. You can leave comments. You can start conversations. All right. Versus Tinder, where it's like you just basically swipe and wait, or swipe and you get the match and then you can start talking. But you basically have to wait for the match to happen or for them to swipe it back. Anyways, use ones where you can communicate, and then just get out and talk to women, because this is the only way you're going to be able to exercise this sort of stuff. Like, and there's no excuses, all right? Because like I'm fucking 46 years old. I'm not a ripped Adonis. I'm not over 6 feet tall, right? I'm 5'11", all right? I'm not super handsome. I mean, I think I'm pretty good looking, but I'm not super handsome. And I do just fine for myself. So you don't have to don't listen to all that bullshit that's out there about that sort of thing. Okay? Hang on a sec. Yeah, King Soul of Power. That's right. Okay, Cupid. That's an old one. That's been around for a very long time. But yeah, that's a good one. But yeah, you got to get out there. You got to just get into action and get things going. And this is how you can make these things happen. Because from what I described, right, the whole thing that I read, the whole interaction, you can't get to that level of expression until you actually get something going on, right? Doesn't that make sense? And isn't that where you want to be? You want to be in an environment where you can express yourself, right? That's the whole point. So it's incumbent upon yourself to make things happen if that's what you want to do, right? You can't just like magically make things happen. Woman's not gonna pop out of thin air, and she's not going to land in your lap, right? You have to make things happen. You have to go out and be social and be that guy, like there's really there's no secrets about it, right? Just go out, start talking to women. If you want to be like super smooth, you can get like digital. You can get digital cards. You know, there's a number of them now, and they're pretty smooth. I used to have them on my phone, and it's basically a digital. It's a digital business card. And so after you're talking and things, and you can like dress them up, you can customize them a little bit in terms of their look. The information, obviously, you can customize, you can add your picture and all that bullshit. And instead of using it for business, you can just put your personal information. And then you tell her to take out her phone, and all you do is just put your phone next to hers, and it automatically zips the card over to her phone. And then she has it. And, you know, it's a pretty smooth way to go about that sort of shit. And if you don't want to, you know, have cards on hand and that sort of thing, because people lose that shit, you know. But yeah, so like I was saying, like if you want to get any of that sort of stuff going on, you have to get the seeds planted. You have to get things moving. All right. So, all right. Well, I've been going here for about an hour. So I'm going to wrap things up. And, you know, so I appreciate everyone who has come through. I hope that what I had put together for you as far as the information regarding being the playwright, being that screenwriter, okay, and how that can be easily incorporated into your dating life. It can be incorporated into the bedroom. It can be incorporated into discipline scenes, all of that stuff. And what a useful tool it is to be able to visualize and be able to put things into writing and to plan. Okay. So I really hope that was helpful for you. I really appreciate those who have come through on the live to catch me here. And again, I also appreciate you who are going to be catching me on the replay. Again, if you've got any questions about what I'm doing, you can contact me at thedominancecademy@gmail.com. And please go to the website, thedominancecademy.com, and check out what I've got going on there. And basically what you do is when you get into the main page, just scroll all the way down to the bottom, click on that big black square with the logo on it, and that will take you to a description of the various programs that I've got. And there's 3 tiers that you can get on right now. And I don't know when or if any of that stuff is going to change. So get on it now. And again, if you have any questions, you can just hit me up and we'll take care of your questions, get you on a consultation call, and we'll get it going. All right. So until next time, I'm out of here.